Hello, I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Kyle Jackson. Now, the United States in past years has been referred to as the mixing pot. Please look to slide 1. Now, the United States has been called a mixing pot because it's similar to an actual mixing pot. In a mixing pot, you take many ingredients, you put it all in a big bowl or the mixing pot, mix it all up, and you got a uniform body or a homogeneous mixture. Now, the United States, in the same way, has welcomed people from different parts of the world with different backgrounds, different beliefs, people from all different walks of life. They've come to the United States in seek of religious freedom, to search for a bright new future, or perhaps just a brand new start in their life. Now, the United States Department of the Homeland Security says that thousands of men and women each year are granted the opportunity to work in the United States as a non-U.S. citizen. Now, these men and women face many challenges in doing this, but it helps the United States because they bring psychological capital to the country and help the economy. I've spent time researching and critically thinking about the information I'm going to present with you this evening, and I'm very excited to share it with you. It's important to be aware of the challenges that these men and women face, as it's important to be able to empathize and understand what they've gone through, especially seeking to be business professionals. Also, it's important to understand what they've gone through because someday you may employ a non-U.S. citizen or perhaps work beside a non-U.S. citizen, and it's important to understand what they've gone through and what they continue to go through in order to work in the United States. Non-U.S. citizens face many challenges working within the United States. Please look to slide 2. We're going to talk about the challenges a non-U.S. citizen faces in obtaining the proper documentation and visa necessary to work in the United States, the various communication barriers that they experience while working in the United States, and discrimination that takes place in the United States that poses a challenge towards non-U.S. citizens working here. Getting the proper documentation is no easy task. The Department of the Homeland Security explains that there are 4 options in order to work in the United States. One of those options leads to U.S. citizenship. The first option is temporary or non-immigrant work. The second option is permanent or immigrant work, at which time that person is actually a U.S. citizen. Student or exchange visitors also have the opportunity to work in the United States, and temporary visitors of business have the opportunity to work in the United States. No matter the type of worker they're categorized as, it's still necessary for them to get the proper documentation and visas required in order to work in the United States as a non-U.S. citizen. Temporary or non-immigrant workers, according to the U.S. Department of State, must be petitioned into the United States by employers. So in other words, they have to look for an employer in the United States. The employer then has to petition for that person to be immigrated into the United States, and then the United States has to approve yay or nay for that immigration. And if they approve, the person comes to the United States and works in the United States for a set period of time, and then has the option to either renew their visa or go home. They're also given the option at times to actually become a permanent resident in the United States. In order for a non-immigrant to become a permanent resident in the United States, they must be petitioned in by their employer, as I've already discussed, or they are to be sponsored by a U.S. relative, or be sponsored in by a legal, permanent U.S. citizen. The Department of State gives an overview of the basic practices or steps needed in order to receive the visa necessary for a non-citizen working in the United States. Take a look at slide 3. The first step is determining the appropriate visa that's needed. There's 10 to choose from. The next step is to apply online. Third step is to schedule an interview at your local embassy in the country that you live in. Fourth, you're to pay necessary fees in order to pay for the application fee for receiving your visa. You have to gather important information such as your passport. You have to attend the meeting that was set up, and if you're approved, you then have to await the appropriate processing time. Getting a work visa is not an easy or a short task, but compared to the communication barriers in the United States faced by non-U.S. citizens, it may be less of a hassle. Now, there are three communication barriers that I'm going to discuss. Scott Ober talks about many falling into nonverbal and verbal communication barriers in his book, Contemporary Business Communication. I'm going to talk about inadequate knowledge or vocabulary, difference in interpretation, or language differences. All three of these can present a barrier in communicating freely with citizens in the country that you are working in. For instance, in Brazil, Boeing advertised their 747 jet as having a rendezvous lounge. Now, in Portuguese, the primary language in Brazil, rendezvous means prostitution. So you can imagine the embarrassment that Boeing felt advertising this way. Now, this is a communication barrier. This is a problem because of a difference in language that they did not understand prior to advertising. Nonverbal gestures can also present communication barriers. For instance, thumbs up means up yours in Australia. The OK symbol means you're a zero in France, and the open palm means you're a bastard in West Africa. These communication barriers are a challenge for non-U.S. citizens, but so is the discrimination faced by non-U.S. citizens in the United States. In the United States, there has become an increasing awareness of illegal immigration. Thus, the word immigration has gotten a negative connotation to it. And this word has been used to represent a class of non-U.S. citizens who are working here legally. Thus, it's had a negative impact on those who are non-U.S. citizens that are working on a legal visa. Now, I've seen this firsthand because working with the public at a hardware store, you hear all kinds of guys come in running their mouths about people stealing our jobs and immigrants jumping over fences and stealing valuable workforce positions. This just isn't true, and it has nothing to do with those who are working legally in the United States as non-U.S. citizens. We've talked about the various challenges faced by non-U.S. citizens working in the United States. We discussed the challenges in getting the proper documentation and visa. We've discussed communication barriers, and we've discussed discrimination in the United States. Non-U.S. citizens face many challenges working in the United States. There's only so many ways to reduce the challenges, and one way is starting and educating people who are willing and able to do so. Now, we cannot eliminate all the challenges, but we do well in reducing the ones that we can. And I thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you have a wonderful evening.